Hi everyone. In this video, I'm going to show how to do a timer with kind of a custom countdown border that plays videos on the inside. And I use this really as a countdown timer for my kids for when they need to clean up or it's getting close to bedtime, or if, for example, we give them a lollipop, we give them, a few minutes with it instead of them eating it all, or whatever, right? So just a timer, and the general gist here is that it plays different videos at different times and just kind of has a countdown border. All right, so let's get into it. All right, we'll start off by creating a new Xcode project. And it will be, again, an iOS app. And we'll just call it Countdown Timer. And again, leave the organizational bundle the way you want it. Interface is SwiftUI, language is Swift. We're not going to be using core data or including any of the tests. Click on Next. And then choose to save it somewhere on your machine. And you can create a Git repository so you can continuously commit your changes and make sure that you don't lose anything that you've worked on. All right, so while this is loading up, I'm going to go ahead and expand this window. And usually what I like to do is at the beginning think about a little bit of what I'm trying to accomplish and what I'm trying to do here. So at a high level, we're going to have a counter or a timer, right? So for the timer, we're going to need what our end variable or our start time will be. So some sort of start time, and in my case, 5 minutes. As I mentioned, this is like a app that I use for my kids when they're, when they have 5 minutes left to do something. So start time will be 5 minutes. We're probably gonna have to have a counter. And this will maybe count down or count up to whatever the 5 minutes we want it to be is. So this will be a variable that moves around. And probably we're also going to need to have some way of showing progress. And probably some sort of clock, like a visual like countdown, so to speak. So let's go ahead and get started. So, so one thing that we'll need is probably that counter. So this will be a state variable, and it will be an int, and we'll start it at 0. And I'm thinking right now we'll count up. So we'll have another variable called count2, and also be an integer, and it will be number of seconds. So I guess 5 minutes, if I do my math, I think right, 5 times 60, we're looking at 300 seconds for my clock. However, for testing purposes, let's just make it 10. It'll make it a lot easier for us to debug and test everything out. So that's really the two variables I want to start off with. Now to show progress, there's a couple options we have here. There's a progress bar. So actually within SwiftUI, if you kind of click the plus sign and go to progress view, right? So this progress view shows a task that's incomplete but advancing towards completion. And you'll notice that it has a value. And the value actually needs to be between 0 and 1. So the progress is 0 and the total is 1. So you use fractions to kind of simulate how far it goes along. So we can try that and take a look to see what it looks like. So a progress view of value 0.5 looks like it's halfway. A progress of 0 is going to have nothing, and a progress of 1 is going to be full. So we can leave this in here. We'll kind of take a look at it. Maybe this is something that we'll want to use, but for now, let's just keep this in here. So that's one option. What I really wanted to do was create a either circular or rectangular view, rectangular box to count down. And so I'll do that next. So in order to kind of create those two rectangular views, we're going to actually stack them on top of each other. So if you kind of think about it, we'll have one rectangle on the bottom, it'll be green, and then a rectangle on top that kind of fills in as we go through. All right, so let's do a rectangle. And we will make it so that so if you see the rectangle right now, it takes up the entire thing and it's black. And it doesn't really look great. So let's go ahead and let's put a frame around this first, right? So let's make this a little bit easier to see, so to speak. So frame width, and we'll make it 250, and we'll make the height also 250. So let's see what this looks like now. All right, so now we have like kind of a frame, which kind of looks pretty good. But I kind of wanted to have the border to kind of just fill up and fill around. So what we can do is we can use something called stroke. And in the stroke, we're going to pass in green color. So I like the color green. Let's see what that looks like. So now you've noticed that there's a green border, but this is really too thin. So let's add a style in here. And what we're going to do is we're going to get a stroke style in here, and let's make the line width 25. All right. All right. So now it's a little bit thicker. This looks a little bit better. Next, probably we want to round the corners maybe. So one thing you can do within stroke style is, in addition to the line width, you can do line join. So where the lines join with each other, we can make it round. Let's see how this looks like. So you kind of see how the corners are now round a little bit. I'm going to comment this progress view out so you can see this rectangle a little bit better. So now we have our green rectangle, and what I want to do is I want to overlay another rectangle on top of it, right? So let's do another rectangle. All right, and this one we'll have to do the same thing. So I'm just going to copy actually a lot of this right here, because we're putting this right on top of each other. And one of the things that I want to also do is I want to kind of change the color of this as we go from different as it progresses. So this, we'll make this. I'll take out these. You know what? Let's just do this for now. We'll make this red. Okay. So if I put this on top of each other, so you'll notice now that it's two rectangles on top of each other. You have green, and then you have the red on top. And one thing that's really, I guess, neat is there's a value called trim. All right, so trims the shape by a fractional amount based on its representation as a path. So the path of this rectangle actually starts here and goes around. And so what we can do, and I'll just show you what this looks like, is from to, okay, click on Option Enter to insert all those variables. So from, let's call it 0, and you can see where 0 starts, to, and this is going to be something that is a fraction, so 0, like halfway, let's say, right? So let's look at what that looks like. So you kind of see that now it trims it from here to here, right? So that's pretty neat. So the thought here is that it would start here at maybe 0.1, then 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, and then eventually it'll get to 1, and that'll be the whole rectangle kind of filled in. And so that's one thing that would be pretty neat. Now, one thing you probably did notice is that when I was at 0.5, these edges kind of looked a little funny here. It doesn't look quite that great, to be honest. So there's actually another thing we can do here called line cap. So it's the at the end, what does it look like? So we're going to make it round as well. So the line cap at the ends, each cap, when it is just a line, it will be rounded, right? So now you can kind of see that this will look pretty good. So we're going to be doing 0.2, 3, 4, 5, etc. So we're going to go around the rectangle like that. So I'm going to keep this at 0.5. One thing I do want to point out is, if rectangle or square is not your cup of tea, you could just do a circle, for example. All right, so now we have our circle on the bottom. We're going to overlay it with another circle on top, and there you go. So now you have kind of this thing filling in as well, right? So again, it'd start from 0.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then when you get to 1, it completely kind of fills in. So just depending on what you want, this is kind of more aesthetics and what you want to play with. But I'm going to go back to a rectangle because I want to put a video in the middle of this. So I want to keep that rectangle and try to pop a video in here telling my kids that they're all done or it's time's up, things like that. All right. So far this looks pretty good, but we want to make some other tweaks to it, right? So we want obviously this to be dynamic, and we also want to have a clock so we know how much time is left. So let's tackle this part here first. So if we're thinking about it, we have this counter that's 0, and we're going to 10, so 0 to 10 seconds. Progress, if you think about it, it's going to be like how much we've made is going to be it should be what our counter is divided by our count to, right? So that will give us the fraction that we are. So 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, so on and so forth. This value should update to whatever that is till it becomes 10/10, and that's 1. So let's actually create a separate function down here to calculate progress. So we'll do it right here somewhere. So we'll call it function progress, and this will return a float, right? Float. And all we're going to do is return, like we said, right? We're going to make this a float counter divided by CG float count to, right? Like we talked about. We're just going to be dividing it and putting it in. So then let's go over here and we're going to call progress, right? So now this thing here will calculate where we are and it will fill this in. Now the next thing is we want to probably have some sort of button that starts the timer and then also starts a timer and then also counts up. So let's go ahead and drop a button somewhere in here, and we'll put it after the Z stack, and we'll just call it button click me to start. And we will have some code in here, and we will open a timer. Now you could do something like this, and SwiftUI will tell you later that you don't need to, but we can do this. For our timer, we're going to do a scheduled timer, and so this creates a timer and schedules it to run on the run loop in the default mode, right? So let's do that, like that. So we have a time interval, and this is how often you want it to be an interval. And so we'll say every second, and we don't need some of these things. All we really need is this part, which is, does it repeat? And the answer is true. We want this to keep going, right? And while this is repeating, we are going to have a time in if self.counter is less than self.count2. So here, if you think about it, we are saying that we have this value that's 0. It's counting up. We're going to have it count up to the 10 seconds. So if it's still less than 10 seconds, then we're going to just increment it by 1. Right. And let me make sure I have all the right pieces here. And it's going to so let's see, repeats with invocation. So let me just make sure that I have this right. So this is, sorry, with time interval. Repeats true. And this is going to say that we never use this variable timer, so we can change it to this underscore. So we'll just go ahead and do that. All right. So this button is also a little hard to see. So let me go ahead and drop a little padding around it. And let me make it a button style, and we'll just do something like a bordered prominent style, something like that. All right. So now when we click on this, counter, this value changes, which is this variable up here using a state property wrapper. And it should, in theory, every time the counter changes, it will, because SwiftUI is monitoring the state of this, it will try to run through here again, and then it will recalculate progress and update. And so let's take a look and see what happens. Let's see if we can just click it here from the preview and see what happens. So if I click to start, there you go. So now it's just going to fill up for 10 seconds, and then when it gets to the end, it will stop. All right, so pretty neat. So now you have your little timer border. We can also do the same thing with this progress view that we have here. And now that we know we have this little progress thing, let's just put a spacer here just so you can see it a little bit better. But now that you have, this is up here, the value is 1, we know we have this progress that we can use again. Right? So let's go ahead and click to start. Let's watch what happens. So both will now fill up. Right? So again, this is really depending on what you want to do, how you want it to look, and things like that. But I'm going to take out this progress view. I think this is kind of neat, but I'm more interested in kind of this behavior for my my border. So let me go ahead and comment this out, and I'll comment this spacer out as well. All right. So the next thing I want to tackle is we really need to know what the time is. So we don't have a time here yet. So I'm going to create actually another view, and you can certainly do it in another file and call it. Because this is going to be a pretty small program, I think, I'm just going to put it down here. So we're going to create a new struct called clock, and it's going to be another view. And in order to be a view, you need to have this body here, and to conform to type view. We do need to actually put something in here, so we'll just do something like a vstack, and I'm just going to do that for now. All right. So the thought is we're going to drop a clock. We can either put it right here or put it on top. Let's put it actually right in the Z stack for now and see what happens, right? So clock. All right. We'll just say text hello, or let's just 0 0. So this is the hope, that I'm hoping that there's will be some sort of timer or some sort of clock here. And what we probably want to do is, first of all, I want to make this bigger, right? So this text, we're going to make it a font. Let's change the system size. And again, a lot of this aesthetic stuff you can look up. I'm not going to go deep into this because just use Google. You can look any of this up. So this is bigger. That's great. Let's change the weight of this so it's a little bit thicker. We'll just do a big thick black. Let's see what happens there. All right, so that looks pretty good. Now we have our timer in the middle of this box, right? But this obviously needs to change as we're counting down. So in order to do that, we need to pass in kind of two variables, right? The first is our counter and our count2. So let's go ahead and var a counter, That's going to be an int. And we're going to var our count to, which is also an int. And within this, we're going to probably do some math. So in here, let's go ahead and start trying to do some math. And probably the easiest thing is to create a function. So my thought right now is this will be a function somewhere in here. And we'll call it counter 2 minutes. All right? And this is going to give us a string back. All right? So what we'll do is let current time equal count 2 minus counter. So this is give us exactly what our current time is going to be, like how much time we are currently at. So this is 10 seconds minus whatever our counter is. As it's counting up, it will have a current time. Now, one thing we could do is we could just return this, right? We could return current time, and then up here we could just call this counter 10 minutes, right? Counter 2 minutes. We could do something like this, right? And so I think I have the wrong return type, but so I'll make it a string, and you could return the current time. All right, so we could do this. All right. Okay, so I obviously tried to call clock, but I did not pass the right variables in because I added those two. So counter will be counter from up here, and count 2 will be count 2 from up here as well. All right. So now let's see if this works. So we can build this. All right, so now it's loaded. It's got the 10 seconds, right? You click to start, right? 9, 8, 7, 6, right? And it's working actually pretty well. It's counting down from 10, but the challenge is once you get beyond 10, then we really need some, beyond 60, we should really be showing the minutes. Now, obviously, if you wanted to, you could do, 100 seconds, and then when you run it, it would just say 100, and it would count down from 100, and maybe that's okay with you. Again, this is your app. You can do whatever you want with it. So it's totally up to you, but for me, I want to teach my kids the minutes, seconds concept. So let's go ahead and go back in here, and we're going to augment this function we wrote here to actually convert our current time to minutes and seconds. So real quick, let seconds. So we're gonna let's handle the seconds first. It's gonna be the current time. So if you think about current time, let's say current time is 100. All right. So obviously in our brains we know that it's 60 seconds in a minute. So that's 1 minute and 40 seconds. But how do you get that 40? Right. So there's a mod which basically divides this by 60 and gives you the remainder. So we're going to divide current time. Let's say it's 100 divided by 60. It goes in one time, and we'll have 40 left over. So that'll give us our seconds. Then we need our minutes, which is basically that one that we had, right? So assuming it's 100, we're just going to take the current time, and we're going to divide it by 60. Now, if I do this, I'm going to get not an integer, right? I'm going to get some float value or something like that. Let's actually see what it says. It actually says it's an integer. But we should force it to be an int because then it'll just give us the 1. So current time, so it's 100 divided by 60. 60 goes into 100 1 point some odd number of times, but it'll just take the 1. So there you go. So we have our minutes and we have our seconds. So instead of returning the current time, we're just going to return minutes with a colon in between and seconds. All right, so let's take a look at what this looks like. All right, let's go ahead and play this or build this. So there we go. So we had 100 seconds. That's 1 minute 40 seconds. Let's go ahead and click to start, and we'll see what it does. So as it's doing this, we are going to think about what we're doing next. So as it's counting down, we really have a pretty full-fledged timer here. We don't have a reset. You can easily, I think you could pretty easily program a reset button yourself. So just add another button and we'll just reset our counters. But as you notice, you see what happened here? So as it gets to the single digits, right, it's looking really strange, right? When it's double digits, looks great. But once it gets down to like 9, 8, 7, because there's only one digit, no zero in front, it looks strange, right? So that's what I wanted to show you as I was talking. And so what we'll do here is we'll add in a little bit of logic, right? So if it's less than 10 seconds, then we're just going to add a zero in front. All right, so it'll look a little bit different. So it's going to be a 0 in front of, gosh, I hope you can read this. This is a little bit hard to read, and I'll just clean it up in a second. All right, so let me make sure hopefully I did this right. Right, so I have too many parentheses. It looks like. Okay, so that should right. So parentheses there. Seconds, if seconds is less than 10 seconds, we'll add a 0 in front. Otherwise, we're adding nothing in front. So hopefully that makes sense. And then we'll just speed this up. We're going to make this, instead of 100 seconds, we'll just do 100 and, we'll do 75 seconds. All right. So let's see what this looks like now. So at 15, it looks good. All right. 14, 13, and when it gets to 10, it'll now put a 0 in front, and that looks a lot better, right? So that was just a little tweak for visual purposes. And that at this point, you really do have kind of a full functioning timer app. But what I want to do also is one thing I have done is I've put little videos actually in this box to tell my kids that it's almost time to stop or whatever, right? So let's move the clock up the top, kind of right here, and we'll move it up here, hopefully. I'll just do this preview. So our timer's up here, and in this Z stack, actually, I'm going to actually drop a like a video, like a fun video, right? So I called it fun videos, and we will for right now I won't pass anything in, and it'll complain because it's not there. So let's create a new view again called fun videos, and again, you could do this in another SwiftUI file if you wanted to, but again, this is such a small program that I'm hoping that we don't, it's readable like this. All right. So in this kind of fun video section, what I want to do is basically create a VStack and just really drop a player in here, so a video player. Now, video player won't be recognized because I have not added in my AV kit. Right? So I added my AV kit for that, and now video player should show up. So now we're going to do a video player, and in my fun videos, I'm going to declare my video. Declare my player, and then over here, I'm just going to call it player, same variable as above, and we will frame it because I want it actually the same. Actually, you know what? I won't frame it, and we'll see what happens because I do want it won't actually quite fit in this rectangle, but we'll go from there. Right? You see how now the video player is gigantic; it takes up the whole spot. So I do want to frame it. All right, so now you can see kind of the video is in here. All right, so that's pretty neat. But now we need to play something, right? And so what I like to do is, again, create a separate function. We'll call it, because I actually played multiple videos, we'll call it update and play video. And we will pass it in a file name. And I'll have to import some files here later, but I want to put in some files so that once it hits a certain time, it will play. All right, so player, and we're going to do an AV player with URL bundle dot main dot URL, and we're going to do the for resource with extension, right? So our resource will be whatever file name we want. So we'll call it like dancing penguin or something, whatever video you can find out there, and maybe the extension is MP4. So let me actually import some files that I found online, and let's see what's complaining about. Oh, I have to. So if it can't find dancing penguin.mp4, I have to handle it. Here I'm going to force unwrap it. Actually, I'm not going to force unwrap it, because if I force unwrap it, it won't find it, and actually Xcode will crash. So let me get the file in first, and then I'll force unwrap it. And I know a lot of people don't like force unwrapping, but let me go ahead and find some files. So here we have these two. I'm going to just drag them over here. All right, and then when you drag them over, we'll copy the item, and we're going to add to the countdown timer. And remember, you really need to make sure you add to the target, right? So once it's in here, if you want to double check, one thing I would recommend is going to your project, and then when you're in your build phase, making sure that these files show up here. Otherwise, it won't work. All right, so let's go back here, and we're going to call this pigeon 32280, right, .mp4, and we're going to force unwrap this. All right, so we have our player here, and what we'll do is we will just play it, right? So player.play. So the thought here is that with our fun video, when we get here, we're going to load a video player with this frame, and as things change, we're going to play a different video. So I want this video to basically play when there's 10 seconds left, right? So on change of counter, right? So we're that counter variable, that counter up here, counter that is up here, right? We're going to actually have to pass it into fun videos. So let's do that. Var counter int, and then up here we're going to have to pass in that again, but I'll fix that in a second. So what we're going to do is, if we change, every time the counter changes, we're going to do this. We are going to new counter in. So if new counter is equal, and so this is the counter, again, remember it's counting up, right? So once it gets to, let's say, we'll do this 30, all right? And so once it gets to like 20 seconds, or sorry, once it gets to, yeah, maybe let's do 30 seconds, 25 seconds. Like once it gets to 25 seconds, right? I want it to play update and play video with this pigeon, right? So I put the file name in here already. Let's just take it out. We don't need this right now. It's only if you want to play different types of files. So let's do that, right? So if you can kind of see what we're doing here, right? If this is equal to 25, which is, you got 5 seconds left, we're going to play a little video for my kids so that they know it's getting close to the time it's going to stop. And here, we're just going to need to add in a counter, and we don't need the player. Counter, and let's see if this works. Replace. Okay, let's go ahead and build this. Let's see what it looks like. All right, so you click at start, and the hope is that once we hit about the 5-second mark, or somewhere around there, the 5-second mark, a video will play for my kids, right? And you can do whatever you want. You can say time to finish or almost done. Nope. So there you go. With 5 seconds left, it plays a pigeon video for them, signifying that it's time for them to wrap up whatever they're doing. And of course, you can have audio and things like that as well. So that, in a nutshell, is really all I wanted to do. The one extension that I will do here is I did a file name, right? I made that a string. And the reason I wanted to do that was because then I could pass in this file name. So let me just copy this and update and play video, right? Pass in that string. And this way you can do something like this, right? You can say, if it's at 25 seconds, then you play this, right? Else, if new counter is at, let's say, at the beginning, right? You just started, then maybe you want to update and play video, and again, you can obviously refactor this to make it a little bit better, but maybe when they start, they get to watch the cartoon, right? Tune 107725. And then what will happen is when it starts, it'll do this number 1, and then it'll do 25. And just to be safe, I'm actually going to pause the player here in case a video is already playing, and then I'm going to actually seek it back to the beginning. Otherwise, I think you get some very strange behavior. So let's take a look at what this looks like, and I'm going to change my 30 is okay. So remember, it's counting up. It's going to play this one video first, right? This cartoon video, and then with basically 5 seconds left, it's going to play this pigeon. Let's see what happens. So on start, plays this penguin video, and hopefully once it hits the 5-second mark, it will end up playing that pigeon video. And so you can insert whatever videos you want, but maybe it's a voice of you saying 1 minute left, or saying all done, right? So with 5 seconds left, hopefully the next video plays, and that way they can have fun with it. So again, a lot of the graphics and design, I'll leave up to you to change whatever you want, but hopefully you learned a little bit about a timer, progress, views, and rendering videos and audio video stuff within SwiftUI. All right, thanks everyone.